Hello, and welcome to National Drillers Roundtable discussion on COVID-19, coronavirus, and how the pandemic affects the drilling industry. This conversation will focus on best practices and protocols for getting essential drilling work done during the pandemic. We'll also touch on how the pandemic may affect getting new contracts and how it could impact the supply chains required to execute those contracts. Our guests today are Brock Yorty, expert drilling trainer and frequent National Driller contributor; Dave Bowers, an instructor with the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 AFL-CIO Apprenticeship and Skill Improvement Program, also a frequent National Driller contributor; Jeff Williams, former NGWA president, master groundwater contractor, and vice president of Spofford & Sons Water Wells in Vermont. He's also this year's McElhinney Lecturer; and Tom Hanna with Johnson Screens, a hydrogeologist and author, most recently of The Operational Stage of the Well, as well as other groundwater books. Each of our guests has expertise to share, but as National Driller readers know, rules, regulations, and laws governing drilling, health, and safety can vary from state to state and country by country. Contractors should plan their projects to comply with local legal and sanitary authorities and any applicable federal laws and regulations. Thanks everyone for joining us today to talk about this vital topic. Let's start with a question for the whole panel. Many drillers fall into the essential worker category. What is an essential worker, and does that classification cover all types of drilling?
Well, I guess Dave Bowers, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here. I guess I'll start because, in Illinois, we've been on lockdown now about 2 weeks. And when it first come out, essential workers, the way that we understood it is infrastructure, right? Or healthcare, something like that. And the way that Department of Homeland Security put it, basically, you have either something to do with a critical form, and water is a critical form, right? But they went further than that, saying that infrastructure. So even some geotechnical jobs for bridge construction and stuff like that weren't shut down in Illinois because they felt that getting that stuff done was important. So it may be a little more state by state, but yes, at least for the area that we're in, pretty much all of drilling was deemed essential.
Is everyone else seeing the same trend lines in their parts of the country?
Yeah, we are, Jeremy. Thank you for having me on here today and hi to the group. You don't know really what kind of a challenge it is until you try to run a company as an essential worker. We're having to go through so much protocol. We're going to talk about that later. The screening process of customers, where you go, where you don't go, trying to manage a much lighter workload in a very detailed fashion has proven to be, I would say, harder than shutting the business down, but I think that we are still ahead of the game being essential workers, and that we can still generate cash flow as long as people continue to have the opportunity to be able to pay you. So it's a really challenging environment. We haven't been challenged on it in Vermont. We've been shut down for a couple of weeks, and it looks like we're going to be shut down through the end of April at the very least. So it's challenging. We're able to get out and work, but safety precautions are number one for me right now. Keeping my crews and customers safe.
And Brock,
hey everybody.
you can. Yeah.
Thanks for coming to watch this town hall, and I hope you're all out there being safe. And I appreciate the guests that have came out today. You guys are all experts in the industry, and I'm happy to have you guys here and being able to bounce these ideas and questions off each other. Essential, it's being interpreted very differently in different parts of the country, that's for sure. And, the National Groundwater Association, when the Department of Homeland Security letter came out, they were right on top of it, along with Jeff Williams, pushing it out to folks, saying, hey, here we are, you are considered essential, critical infrastructure work. And then, as different states have shelter in place orders, it's just how it's being enforced is how it's impacting us. So some states we have placard vehicles that you have the letter on you, you have a specific job you're going to. It's being interpreted as, is new construction critical if it's to a home that's not nobody's living in? Is that called critical infrastructure? Some home builders here in Michigan right now are allowed to put a roof on an existing build that they have going, or it's been interpreted that they are to secure the job site. A project that I'm involved with, it was questioned since it was a new well, if we should just secure the job site and step off. And we just happened to be in the middle of drilling the production zone on a very deep well, and it's not something you can step away from. But from the rest of the business that I get to be involved in with right now, keeping infrastructure, water supplies, municipalities going, that's deemed our critical work, is making sure we're keeping the water flowing, right? New business, non-critical jobs, even though we're essential workers, we don't want to take the risk, just like Jeff alluded to, and we'll get into, and Dave definitely has some great concepts on decon, and Tom being Johnson Screens, which is the lifeline of many great water systems, having that great screening system, we're all essential to making water flow out of the ground. It's just what is it today, and how does it apply? Do we need to take that necessary risk?
Okay. Tom, did you have any input on this?
Yeah, just a little bit. What I see is similar to Brock, and it's kind of interesting. It reflects really what's going on in our whole country. I think we're mirroring that, in that, this is all new and different, and the rules vary. Even they're broad rules, but their interpretation of them varies, and then it varies from state to state and from entity to entity. What is essential, what isn't? Some places have more guidelines than others, but I think it mirrors what's going on. This is all a work in progress. And the one thing we can expect is more things will change one way or another. And then there's another layer too, things such as mines have their own rules on top of what might be state rules, and they're going to enforce things maybe more stringent at a mine site. Typically they have very stringent rules for coming, going, checking in and out of properties. And one thing I'm seeing is a lot more iron is stacked up around mines, and it's harder for drilling contractors to get on some of these large mine sites.
Okay. So
that's an interesting point, Tom, because we think mines, we're thinking precious metals and whatnot, but we also have to be able to mine good gravel pack, so those are also considered, our gravel and quarries, where we're going to need that gravel pack for production wells. So how is that being interpreted, and if we're able to get what we need for to be able to finish a well that we're at the critical process of getting the screen and gravel pack.
Okay.
Well, I kind of think that at where we're at, we're still on the upside in most places towards the base of this curve, right? We're not real far onto this curve yet in most places. And like Tom said, I expect that definition of essential to narrow, right? They're gonna say at some point, hey, we were allowing this, but if the numbers continue to grow exponentially the way that, way faster than they anticipated, and the healthcare system becomes overly taxed in any one area. New York originally had everybody was essential in construction and had to shut it down. Boston had to shut all the construction work down they're going to narrow based on what is going on with the healthcare system, this definition. So it's something you have to really look at almost on a day-to-day basis. What has changed today?
Okay. Okay. And Dave, you're talking about the curve of the virus infections where there's naturally
Right.
a slope that goes up and hits a peak and then comes back down as some of these measures we've been going through, like the social distancing in some states, take effect. So, what are some of the effects of the pandemic that each of you are seeing in the industry?
I can lead that off. We're seeing workloads are going down. The phones actually pretty much stopped this week on anything for a new construction call. There's a gap in that. I mean, there's so much information, like Dave alluded to. There's so much new information almost on a daily basis that people are really starting to just pull back right now. I think they're in a holding pattern until they can get some semblance of an idea of where this curve is going to go, both in infection and death rates, and what our hospital system, our doctors and nurses, the amount of beds we have. So I think there's a lot of people that are just going into a holding pattern, and then the financial impact of this is, I mean, that's just out to lunch, right? We don't have any idea what this is going to look like because we're in the beginnings of it. So we're seeing some pullback now, and we're just really focused on emergencies and taking care of our people. That's all we can do for the short term.
And I've seen a lot of that with, like I said, our workers were doing some things, and I think we're going to talk about a little later, in where it's changed our work site. But what it's really changed, my son is still out there, deemed essential worker, he's a mechanic for an environmental company doing environmental work. Every day when he comes home, it's changed the way we look at, because my facility that I work at, we're shut down right now. We had a fair amount of people every day, 300, 350, something like that. Didn't make sense for us to continue working. I got a call out for work that they wanted me to go to a job that I said, well, it was a travel company coming in, and I kind of went, hold off. I don't know people where they've been. Why would I bring that to my family, right? So didn't do that. So all the people who are deemed essential are going back to their families, and that's really where the impact has, because that's in the back of everybody's mind now, right? They're thinking about, okay, not only am I doing this at the job, when I have to interact with people, even at a safe distance, you get and have to worry, okay, how do I decon myself out enough that I can interact with my family?
Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
We're going to hit some of the other things later, but as of right now, just from a business flow, material flow standpoint, we're actually very busy, and it's been interesting. There's a number of projects that are moving along and have not been affected, but what I'm hearing about is looking out down the road. I think some projects are now being pushed off and delayed. The ones that were already scheduled, and there's a couple of big projects where contracts are being signed this week and they're continuing ahead. So as of now, from a material supply standpoint, it's been very busy, but I do see things slowing down in the near future.
Well, we're going to get through this, and we're going to have to continue our business. And, drilling holes in the ground is a temporary pathway to be able to put our product in and extract product. So when you're on a 2,000-foot, 29-inch hole, it doesn't care that we're in a pandemic. We can stabilize it. We can get the best drilling engineers and fluids engineers in the world to give us recommendations, but water comes through those zones in sand and gravel drift type situations because it's got a pathway and it's not going to stay open, nor do we want to fill a borehole full of drilling fluid and let it set, 8, 9, 10 weeks. So unlike a 20-story building, if the entire country is slowing down right now, we're all delayed on when that building needs to be completed. But a borehole like this, or continuing to define where PFAS is going on monitoring wells, or some of the research data that we need that it is, drilling us to discover the unknown. So, we still need those data sets, or we're going to set things backwards. And I do have colleagues that, from an environmental standpoint, that are going, we can't lose 3.5 months worth of work, because we're about to come into the rainy season and we're going to see things change throughout the country. And it's one of those things that now we need to be essential so that we can continue to define what's going on with that Superfund site, or what's next, because we're always going to need our groundwater resource. So we got to make sure we're stabilizing and protecting it, regardless of the pandemic.
Jeff, what are you seeing?
As far as with workload coming up?
Well, what are the effects that you're seeing in your business, or that you're hearing about from your peers in the industry?
We're seeing that a lot of the commercial sites, the companies that are working in the municipal markets are still moving right along, right? Because they have to continue. They have to continue with pumps and rehabilitation. I think the diversity in your market share within your company is going to drive some of how busy you are and the products that you put in. The residential market, we're seeing real estate markets are frozen right now. Nobody's showing houses. Nobody's listing houses. How about the builders that are building houses? Are they going to be sitting on that inventory for a while? What's this going to do to the actual price of houses? Is it something where I could get $400,000 for it a month ago and it's worth $300,000 next month? There's so many undefined pieces of this that from my point of view right now, I will make no big decisions other than day to day and safety, and continue to try to pay the bills that I have and pay attention to the markets. And when we get out the other side, so we have 20/20 hindsight, right? So right now we don't have any big decisions to make other than what we do day to day to keep the doors open and keep our customers in water, keep our employees safe. That's all we're doing right now.
Okay, so what are some of the protocols you recommend contractors use to mitigate risk due to coronavirus, and how do those differ from what folks might be doing now?
Well, what we've had to do, right, is normally you show up on a job, drilling job. If you're doing drilling, pump work, whatever, that first part of the time on the job would be spent greasing, doing maintenance, getting the rig, make sure the rig can run. Now, not only are we having to do that, but we're also having to do a little decon, right? Clean the parts that we're going to touch, clean the tooling that we're going to be touching, right? Make sure that anything new that comes on the job site is washed before we handle it, right? Those kind of things are very important for us to do to not move anything around. Look at a little more social distancing whenever possible on the rig, right? Those things aren't real difficult to do on a drill rig. They just take a little pre-planning, a little time. And some people wonder, okay, well, how do I do that? Soap and water works wonders if we have it, right? If we can just wash stuff down and rinse it off, we're in pretty good shape. Now, I myself, if it's available, also like the Lysol things too, but it's not always going to be available. Soap and water will work, and then it's back to the stuff we're already being told. Don't touch your face. And as a driller, 90% of the time, I've got gloves on anyway. If I touch my face with my gloves, I've got, grease or whatever on my face. So those things aren't that difficult to do, but we have to understand that we should be deconning before we do any work, as well as deconning afterwards, because we have to leave the site, especially if the equipment's staying on site. We have to leave the site every day, assuming the same crew may not be able to come back. Something changes. Somebody develops symptoms or comes in contact with somebody and has to go into a quarantine, right? All those things could change. And like Brock says, we can't just leave something sit for 14 days. Someone's going to that job, right? We're going to have to send somebody. So every night we have to kind of look at, okay, what if I'm not coming back?
Jeff, what are you seeing?
David had some things that he sent out. I read some of the articles that he put out early and some of the stuff that Brock sent out early in some of the discussion sites. And what we did early on to try to get in front of this thing was started splitting crews, started splitting up facilities. I moved crews off site. I had crews separated on site with their own bathroom facilities. I actually, because Vermont's going into another 30-day extended shelter in place, just bought a little 115-volt hot water heater and a slop sink to put out next to the porta potty for the crew that's out in the container. That's where they're going to live for a while. So I'm trying to make it, because we want warm water to wash our hands and the soap, and we've got to make it reasonable. So we're doing everything we can to separate the crews and keep them apart so we can't cross-contaminate a crew. We're acting like every surface is contaminated until it's not. Like every surface. Every house has somebody in it that's under quarantine with COVID-19 until we prove they're not. Right? That's how we've got to approach this, because we got met at the door yesterday. One of my crews, they said, I was exposed to someone that is infected, but my test hasn't come back yet. And they met him at the door. We got all the way to the door. And they just backed up and said, okay, it looks like you're going to be running the water on the inside. So really, you're fighting an enemy now that we can't see, right? What did Governor Cuomo call it? The great equalizer. And he's correct. Nobody's exempt from it. It can hit anybody. You don't know that you've got it until it's too late. You've probably already passed it to somebody else. So we have to go forward with that. We have to have plenty of PPE, face masks. We have a chlorine solution. I went out and picked up at the advice of my colleagues on the COVID-19 site and groundwater professional site. We came out with some 12% chlorine. We've cut it down to a reasonable level. We disinfect and spray our tools before and after every job, every handle, everything is done. So like I say, we are absolutely treating every house like it's contaminated, and every surface is contaminated until we prove otherwise. That's the only way we're going to get through it. We have to be available to go out and fix these water supplies. People rely on us to be healthy, not bring it to their dooryard and not take it to somebody else's dooryard and not have our people infected.
I saw a thing that every driller should understand. Act like everything is covered in copper coat. It's completely covered in copper coat. You don't want it anywhere. Act like that. If we do that, we should come out well.
Yeah,
copper coat or NICs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said a minute ago, where if you have gloves on and you're gonna get it on it. Don't touch your face, you'll know. Brock, what kind of things are you recommending?
We're a dirty industry. We work in mud. We have big equipment that's disrupting the ground, and there's cuttings going places. And we're also questionable at safety on a lot of topics in our industry. And, somebody the other day said something about, I can't believe now that I got to pump gas with a glove on. And as I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, just in a common situation, I pump gas without gloves on, and then I get in and I eat French fries as I'm driving down the road and I touch my steering wheel. And so, this virus is highly contagious, and it's a wake-up call to a new normal. And so for the crews that I've been working with and getting to work with Jeff and Dave and have these great discussions throughout our industry, it's been about we got to be smart, we got to be safe, and we got to educate the heck out of them. And we got to continue to educate them that, we can operate safely. We just have to be smarter than how this spread is happening right now. So as I have crews that go out, we look at the areas they're going into and we look at the amount of cases, and, you question if that maintenance has to be done. If, rural water, when you get into municipalities on smaller villages and towns and whatnot, they may only have 2 wells. They have a primary and a backup, and often they don't call until the backup is already being used and it's acting funny because of budgets and whatnot. So we have men and women that have to be out working. When you're pulling pumps, you can't be 6 feet apart. You're going to be, breaking apart tooling and whatnot. So you got to trust your crew to go out and stay smart and safe and do social distancing outside of the job. And, Jeff brought that up, and I'd love to hear how he got there in the first place of, how do I make sure my men are social distancing at home as well as on the job. But the bigger one there is now we communicate with all of our customers virtually. We don't want them to show up on site. If we're going to somebody's home, we're still using the phone or a text message. We don't want face to face. And now we're starting to see these deals about masks and scarves and whatever else, that a choir in Washington, that was standing apart from each other, other people got infected. And so not just sneezing and those things, but conversations in general, you could get this virus now. So it's 100% about keeping the guys and gals up to speed on our processes, and it's ever evolving. So, today Detroit just started doing the 15-minute test, and I'm really excited to see how quickly we can ramp this up, because it would be great to be able to, personally for me to get it and see if I was already infected and I've gotten over it. And now I know I can do my job, but I'm still not going to come in contact with anybody I believe that I could completely impair, if it's immune impaired or COPD or the elderly, those type of things. And funny enough, Jeff and I talked about this as I was talking to him about his McElhaney speech, and we were at under 150,000 cases worldwide. And that was 10 days ago, Jeff, and now we're at 1 million cases. So the economy of scale, as this virus spreads, we will change and adapt, and we will question, can we buy water from a different municipality? What can we do to mitigate the amount of risk there? And on top of that, we don't have urgent care for any other situation. Ventilators, Sanjay Gupta made a comment about ventilators are for life support, car accidents, strokes, those type of things. And now we're using them for COVID. So, any catastrophic event we can get into, our person could be severely hurt just because we can't get them the care they need. So it's an evolving situation. It's like a house fire that we want to make sure everybody's gotten away from, and we're getting it contained, but at the same time, the wind could pick up. So it's an evolving situation.
Yeah. So Tom, are there any mitigation steps that manufacturers like Johnson are taking or have put their employees through that are helping you to keep keep the lights on, as it were?
Yeah, so we are an essential business and we have multiple plants. And the first thing I want to say is people are scared at our facilities. They're afraid. So part of it is maintaining a workforce that feels comfortable being at work, right? It's on steady times right now. So we're doing everything we can to make people feel comfortable and feel what they're doing is justified to put themselves in those places besides a paycheck. We are lucky. We do have relatively large facilities that have space. So we are able to maintain social distancing we have changed how we come and go from our shifts. So for example, when one shift comes on, the first thing they do is they clean down their whole area. So they work through their shift, they're apart at breaks, all those things. They aren't allowed to congregate. They are spaced out on the factory floor, which is a good thing. Our facilities are amenable to that and our processes. When they're done with their shift, they sanitize their sites, and then we have a cleaning crew come in for an hour in between shifts, which before one shift would come in, the other shift would leave. So the two shifts never pass each other.
Mm.
Then we have cleaning crews that come in between shifts and do a cleaning of the facility. And so we're doing everything we can on that end. Another thing we just implemented today, and I'm kind of curious to see what the contractors are. And again, this is a hydrogeologist talking about viruses, but my understanding is the primary spread of this virus is through airborne droplets. And so that's the social distancing thing. It's harder to get it off a surface. I'm not going to say you can't, but it's harder because then you got to touch the surface, then you got to take your hand and put it in your mouth, your eye, or something like that. But so what we're doing now is people are wearing masks. And so the masks aren't to protect the individual wearing them. They're not the special 95 masks to prevent inhalation. But what that will do, hopefully, is it will prevent the spread through airborne droplets. It's not perfect, but I think it's a step in the right direction. If you sneeze and you have something over your face, you know, let's face it, those droplets aren't going to go 10, 15 feet. They're probably going to stay, you know, a couple feet closer to you anyway. So I would encourage anybody, you know, well, I went to the grocery store today and guess what? I put a mask over my mouth and it was kind of neat. Everybody in the store was. And they weren't doing it to protect them. They were doing it to protect the other people around them. So I think that's another way the rules are changing from all of us. And I think we're going to see that a lot more everywhere.
Okay, so would you expect policies like state shutdowns, um, you know, even for essential businesses over time to affect supply chains for some of the contractors in the audience?
Yeah, so I would just say be prepared, be patient. It's the script hasn't been written yet. It's an ongoing script writing. And so there may be delays for us to get materials to get them through our factory even. What happens if we do have a virus spread through our factory? I hope it doesn't happen. You know, that could shut down the facility. I think it's a whole new ball game of awareness and health and safety. I think we're all doing better. I think we're learning.
Mhm.
And here's something else. This is not going away in the next month. And so we're hoping that we can flatten the curve so the healthcare system doesn't get overwhelmed. But the reality is we don't know, but I'm pretty sure for the next 2, 3 months, this is going to be business as usual. What we're hoping is it will be business.
Mhm, mhm. So if the widespread shutdowns that we're seeing last longer than a month or two, I mean, what does the industry look like in July if it's, you know, as contracts dry up and things like that? I mean, what does a couple of months of this look like?
Well, if we continue on like we are now, I think we'll just see a slowdown. But if there is large shutdowns, and and again, this is my personal feeling, I think we're going to see things morph area by area, right? So a one size fits all rule isn't necessarily good for the whole country. If I'm working in an area where it's more widespread and, there's a higher percentage of infection, that may not apply to as much where it's a more rural area, where the spread isn't as wide and people can move a little bit more freely. But again, I think the rules are going to be made as we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, what professionals are saying is that there's a possibility, yeah, we're looking at, early summer, something like that, hopefully to be on the downside. But if it's like other viruses, if it's like the flu, we can expect fall to have another surge, late fall into the winter. And we have to be prepared for those things. Now we're going to be more prepared then than we were for this. I started looking at this for our hazmat refreshers back in November. We were looking at this and it was a problem in China, and it, thought, well, what if it were to come here? Couldn't even fathom the draconian measures that have had to be taken in order to stop the spread of this, right? That I think is as scary for people as anything. As Americans, we're not used to having our freedoms curtailed. And that's what people feel. Their freedoms are being curtailed. So hopefully, if it were to surge again in the fall like other viruses do, we're closer, hopefully, to a vaccine. But getting people to wear masks and accept the things they need to do, hopefully we can keep that actual outbreak, if it happens, down to a minimum.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Brock, and then Jeff.
It's our new normal. We're gonna have to operate in it. Where do we go next? Our industry is, diversification has really helped our drilling companies be able to have the equipment they have, and new business is a core to that. And in the early 2000s, when I still worked for Yordi and Son Well Drilling, and the housing market slowed down here in Michigan before it did in the rest of the country, it really impacted the water well business, because emergency and critical work is great, and it's what helps sustain a business, but it's not what helps grow or helps keep that making that $12,000 a month rig payment. And so, we've been talking about mortgages and we've been talking about auto loans and freezes on student loans, but a drill rig is $900,000 and a water truck, and you can easily have $1.5 million or $2 million in equipment. And we've been in growth mode. We've been doing great things. And now if we slow down to critical work and service only, it's going to be detrimental to a lot of my peers and friends. And Jeff has been making leaps and bounds decisions before many people in the industry, and having these discussions and questions from his people, making sure they're being smart about social distancing on their off hours, to how does he keep his business open. And I want to hear from Jeff on this more than anything, because when I worked for Jeffco, I know he just bought a new rig, and that's looming on any great company that's been growing, because we've been in a great spot so far with new housing starts, and there's been a lot of new rigs go out, and now here we are, and that pause button is going to be detrimental.
Yeah, it is. My lecture is about business and finance and planning, right? And knowing where you are financially, because if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. So in 11 states, 13 lectures in the first 2 months of this year, or 2.5 months of this year, for certain, I was not living in a vacuum, right? So that's how I was able to gather as much intel as I could, or as I did, is that I was in so many states and I lectured to thousands of people during that period of time. So I'm watching this virus and how it's developing around the world and applying it to what I was going to do, where I was going to be traveling, So I became very, very aware of what was going on. And then I've got a great circle of friends that I reached out to, with Brock and now David. I've known Tom for a long time as well. And I have other colleagues. I have a colleague that has a good friend at the WHO. We got some information early out of the World Health Organization, and my son is at UVM Medical Center. And he gave me a lot of early intel as to where this was going and what it was going to be doing. So I took it, and because I'm not afraid of change, and we're in the water well contracting business, we adjust and adapt. We start the day thinking one way, and we end up the day not even recognizing where we were through the day. So we're good at adjusting and adapting. So this industry has a leg up on it, but we're also not very good when it comes to change. We don't accept change very well. We don't accept criticism at all, right? You get this huge pushback. And so we have to be more open-minded about this, and we have to be willing to accept what's going on. We need to be looking forward. We have to be, the strategist that is inside of us has to come out, especially during these times. We've got payments to make. Thank goodness it's not the first year I bought the rig that we're 4 years into it, so that's good. I've managed my debt load. I have set my margins. I've set my profit margins. I've set my reinvestment schedules. I've been doing this for 2 years now, really aggressively, since I've been taking college classes in finance. So financially, we're in as good a position as we've been in a long time to weather this kind of a storm. So that's good. I hate to see it all go out the window, but if I didn't have it, it would be even worse. So let's take it for what it is, and let's do the best we can. So, just the opportunity of, the change that I've seen. You walk up to a person on the street, you used to think they were healthy. Now they're sick. We're looking at this from a very different side, right? We're looking at, they got the virus, or they're carrying the virus. You don't walk right up and shake hands with somebody, assuming that they're safe to shake hands with. You walk up and you keep at least 6 feet away, and you give them the benefit of the doubt that they may be carrying this stuff.
Yeah. I
didn't realize that I touched my face 465,000 times a day until I started counting, right? Once you start keeping track of it. So these are things, traits that we pick up over time that we're going to have to change. I hope we get away from, not walking up and thinking somebody has something that's contagious, but I know this is going to stick with us for some time. We created some policies, very aggressive policies, very early, and went only to emergency service work and what we had to do. We stopped scheduling regular routine service and all that, and that won't restart until we see the other side of this. And we're 6 weeks coming in, so we're going to be another 6 weeks coming out. I figure this is a 3-month deal. And then maybe we can restart and start to go back to work again. But this, I think, is a 90-day process. In my world, that's what I'm figuring for. I'm figuring for economic impact from this to go on through the end of 2021. In different areas of the country, we're going to be hit at different levels. So we have to be prepared for these things, and we have to be thinking logically about it. We can't give knee-jerk reactions. We have to be strategic. And the policies that we're developing right now are not really policies. I call them interim guidance, because we're still learning about this thing. So we use these interim guidance documents. And then at the other end, whether we can craft an intelligent policy to deal with pandemics and these things, or whether we even need to, whether we keep our interim guidance there and then adjust it and adapt to the next one. So, I mean, it just changes every day, but we can't put our head in the sand. We can't live in a vacuum. We have to reach out. We have to be aware of what's going on, up to and including the SBA loans and the PPP plan, the paycheck protection plan. We're still learning about that. I'm hoping that we can put in for that today. They said it was going to go live and we were going to put in for it. That's a lot of money. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in companies my size that could be forgiven. That's a big deal. We better take advantage of it. So if you're living in a vacuum now, you're probably in for a lot longer road than those that aren't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's certainly a lot for readers to think about. Now, what is one short message each of you would like to leave viewers with? Let's start with Dave, and then Tom, and then Jeff and Brock, please.
Yeah, just to echo a little bit of what Tom said, we have great people all around us. This industry is filled with wonderful people who are talented. As long as we assist them in keeping their heads and knowing what they need to do, they'll take care of this industry for us, right? So the people that I work with, that Tom works with, that Brock works with, you know, if we give them the information, we have to trust that they're going to do what we're asking them to do. And on their part, you know, just try to make sure that going through this, if we do everything with the thought of, would I let my child, my spouse, someone like that, touch this, handle this after I've cleaned it? Am I going to bring something home to them? If they keep that in the back of their mind, everybody should come through this safe, right? And that's really, you know, decon. If we stay clean and we come home clean, our industry should remain healthy.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, well, I'm an optimist, and so let's look at the optimistic side here. Yeah, we're going to come out, we're resilient. I think it's a resilient and very helping industry. So again, if we work with each other and keep the communication up, the supply chain, the drilling, things will move on. I think as a country, yeah, unfortunately, there's going to be heartache and it will affect a number of people, but the majority of us are a year from now, hopefully, you know, it will just be another virus that passed through in some weird times. We will move on and we will persevere and the industry will be whole and we'll keep on serving people with water.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, the guidance that I'm sort of going to live by is protect my people, protect my employees, protect my customers, and protect my business in that order. Because without my employees, we don't have a business, and without our customers, we don't have a business. So then we go to the business planning and strategies. I said we're looking at some time here. Everybody's going to react to this differently. If we plan for the worst and hope for the best, then I guess anything better than the worst is a step in the right direction. So just going to be conservative and just sort of watch it day by day, pay attention to my social media outlets and my friends, and keep the email chains going, and just keep aware of where this is headed, and when we can get back to work. It's the only thing we can do.
Okay, and Brock? One thing you'd like the viewers to remember going out of this conversation?
So, you know, we got three great experts on here with Jeff, Dave, and Tom, and there's a lot of education happening right now on how we can operate as an industry. From Dave's safety to you know, Johnson and what they're doing to be able to keep us going, to Jeff and his discussions about business and embracing change and whatnot. And we keep talking safety and sanitary conditions, and the drilling industry, we joke about it being a dirty job. We joke about it being complex tasks and that it's hard work, and that now we're out there and we're essential employees. We have an opportunity as essential employees doing critical infrastructure work to uphold the professionalism that is required of us being out there and not being a problem. And that is taking this virus seriously, taking the advice that we're hearing from our panel, from the NGWA, from what National Driller's pushing out, you know, from the CDC. All the information that's happening is for a reason, because this virus is highly contagious. We have to continue to operate. And we have drilling projects that getting to work with National Driller and take photos and stuff. I've stepped out on jobs that, you know, everybody out there looks like a surgeon and a scientist, and we're drilling this beautiful water well. And there's other jobs I step out on as I was with Bayreuth or something, and we're in a cutoff shirt and jean shorts and tennis shoes, no hearing protection, no hard hat, those type of things. And we throw caution to the wind on all of those situations that are very scary for our industry on injuries. And now we have this virus that's on top of that. So we have to show the industry that we are groundwater professionals and that we can show up and we can keep our customers safe and our municipalities safe and supply water. And so we got to take it serious. And I know many are, and I'd say just as many aren't. And it's very, very important right now. The industry just saw, all of our customers are seeing, the news is seeing that construction workers are essential. So we have to show that we can take that responsibility seriously. And I know companies are, and at the same time, I'm seeing things on social media that's showing we're not. And it's up to us right now to show the industry that we have $1.5 million or $2 million worth of equipment, and we're trying to supply water to you. And that's why we're an essential employee, and we're going to treat you as the expert we are. Because we can make water come out of the ground. We're great at that. But now it's showing the other end of the industry why we're here and why we are a legacy industry.
Okay, so one more question, Brock. We have all of this expertise on this panel here today. Are there any questions, like from a reader perspective, are there any questions that if I could get this group of people together in a room that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to start with Tom. You know, he was about to host his annual groundwater and well school in Colorado, right? It was about to come up, and it's been delayed until one, it's a hell of an opportunity to get that professional development standpoint. The Groundwaters and Wells book is one of our Bibles that we use in this industry often. And since we have Tom here, what is a 21st century, regardless of the pandemic happening, what is one of the things that you want to instill in everybody right now outside of the pandemic as creating a water system, if it's from a residential to a big municipality? What were you excited to teach this year at the class?
Yeah, we're moving along with some better ways to track the aging of a well and how to determine when it's time to rehab a well and be more proactive. And I guess that's one of the things that we've always preached is on the well ownership side, maintenance side, let's be proactive and not be reactive. And we tend to be more reactive. So the tools are out there. And then one other side on that, here's the other side, the pandemic side. I don't even know when to reschedule the class right now. A lot of people have asked, when are you going to reschedule this? Well, right now, the hotel we got a contract with is closed. They've closed the whole hotel. So I can't even get back to them for a while to determine what dates are open. And boy, if I had a crystal ball and I could say, gee, September, October, November would be a great time to do it. At this point, I don't have a clue.
Well, thank you for the class and all the research you do and the teaching. It's and go Broncos. I can see my wife has taken my office over as admissions for Western, and I know you're a fellow Bronco. Dave, I've gotten to teach with you. You're in the geotech world, the water well world, geothermal, and safety's a big thing here. We've talked about focus, and we have this new job site distraction right now. What would you tell our essential workers right now, our supervisors and our leaders, to keep everybody staying focused, to stay safe? I know you have some good advice about this.
Well, focus is where accidents happen, right? Accidents don't happen while people are focused on the tasks that they're supposed to be focused on. And the best way that they can stop that from happening is you need to look at every task you expect to do during that day. Everybody has to know it comes back to communication, what's expected of you. right? We talked about, not long ago, you and I talked about a gentleman got his fingers smashed, right? And we don't know for sure if it was a loss of focus by the gentleman running the winch or bad hand signals. But either one is stopped if in the morning, the first thing that we do, or before we do this new task, we're drilling and doing this, we're going to trip out. Make sure everybody understands what they're supposed to do. And hey, this is how I like to run things. I know when you run a drill rig, Brock, you run things a certain way. When I run a drill rig, I run it a little different way, right? I'm that guy that, I can survive without a helper. I'm relatively, I know, hold on, don't do that. I can survive. I like to handle as many things myself as I can. Some of that is because I know what I'm going to do, right? And most of the time I'm working with brand new apprentices, which, and trying to bring them along. Most crews want to split that stuff up. As long as you know this is exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to do the same thing every time. It comes back to what Tom said earlier about going out to the job, right? He talked about, well, you got to plan. It's the same thing with every task we do. Plan your work your plan. If you do that, we don't have problems, right? Nothing bad happens. There's a lot of hazards. There's a ton of hazards on a drill rig. And we can mitigate the risk of each one of those hazards if we know what the guy next to us, what the guy working with us is going to do. And you know what? The other thing, a lot of times, take a half a step off. Slow down a quarter of a step or a half a step, and things run a lot smoother. And there's not a whole lot more than that you have to do.
Thank you. And I had just had a reader from Australia, Victoria, Australia, that hit me up, and he goes, Brock, we're following the stuff on Facebook and National Driller and NGWA, and the decon talk that was just had was excellent. And he goes, oh, by the way, we've deemed that one employee will start the compressor every day and run the controls. And, they've even taken it one step further so they can continue to operate by isolating jobs and assigning specific hand tools. And sure, we're still going to have to get close, but, he took our guidance and then gave his feedback back on how they went one extra. And that will be their way to do it.
That's excellent.
Jeff, thank you for being on here. And it's crazy how quickly this has ramped from you and I having a conversation and looking at where is this going to go to today, 1 million cases worldwide. And I have two questions, and one is pertaining to the McElhenney talk and, what you've been discussing with, your plans. Was there a pandemic plan, or was there a 6-month winter storm plan? Or when you started talking about, knowing your costs and all of this stuff, this is for us discovering the unknown, this happening the way it happened is the biggest unknown that I've experienced in drilling. And so did you have a plan, or is there one now?
We've got interim guidance in the company. As far as for the McElhenney series, it was, we were sure we were going to get into some snow. We were sure we were going to have events we couldn't get to or get back from. And we had a few we couldn't get back from, but I made every one of the requests we got to them. One of the things that I was talking about in the lecture series was a recession. Right? We've been living large here for how many years in a row, and that's the new normal, right? Just sort of going forward. And I said, we've got to be ready for a slowdown because we're going to have one. And little did I know it was going to happen before I could get off the plane. That's how fast this happens, right? It's just like this. And here we are. We've got a recession right in front of us. It's right here, right now. So I hope my message wasn't too late. I'm sure with only a couple months to plan, anybody that was making any changes didn't really get much of a chance to implement the changes before we got into a recession. So 2020 hindsight, I wish this lecture was last year so people at least had a year to get prepared. I've seen what's happened in our business in the last 2 years in being a better strategist about planning and forecasting and budgeting. And a lot of that comes from my years at NGWA, Paul Humes, being on the board, being the president, being exposed to, to people like you and Tom and Jeremy and all the other directors that I've been shoulder to shoulder with for the last 15 years, and the very close friends I've made that are superior business people. So, the economic impact, the viral impact is one thing, right? And then the business plan part of it is another complete entity on its own. And then we got the financial side. So we're really looking, the financial side is yet to be seen because we're just getting into it, but there's going to be one there. So plan. It's like decon, plan, budget, forecast, and manage your expenses.
And that's what's crazy, and you said this today, we professionals develop on safety, on drilling, on screening production zones and sieve analysis, and and we don't have enough professional development on finance. And I did hear you say today that you're taking college finance classes right now.
I took them for the last two. I've taken them the fall of the last 2 years. I've taken a full semester of financial accounting, computerized accounting, and payroll accounting back in 18. And in 19, I took managerial accounting. And I'm hoping that this fall that the Community College of Vermont will have another evening class so I can take another financial class that pertains to what we do, whether that's cost accounting or wherever it goes, because it keeps me focused on the prize. It keeps you looking at what you got to do. We developed today, right, over the last few days, got ready to apply for this payroll protection plan. Well, so where's all this information, right? Well, if you know your company really well, it takes you a few hours and you can assemble what you need and you can go and fill out the application. If you don't, it's a very onerous process. People will not take advantage of it because they won't be able to identify that it works for them. So the stronger you are financially, the better off you are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, so decon, and budget. I guess those are the big messages from this discussion. But we've covered a lot of territory today. But of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is an evolving challenge for the industry. This conversation took place Friday, April 3rd, 2020. National Driller will continue to talk about the coronavirus through video conversations like this and in articles and other videos on our website, www.nationaldriller.com. I'd like to thank each of our panelists for their time today and listeners for giving us their attention during these busy times. Thank you and see you next time.